What's up guys, my name is Raygun and welcome to the very first episode of Fantastic Builds. That's my new series, that's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it Fantastic Builds. And of course this video itself is called Fantastic Builds and Where to Find Them. I actually love the title of the series and I'm excited going forward for this whole show. So anyway guys, today I'm going to be talking about where to find the best builds per game mode in Guild Wars 2. Now jumping straight into it, the very first builds we're going to look at is open world builds. Now, of course, I'm going to have to mention a staple of the community here, which is, of course, metabattle.com. Now, Metabattle is such a fantastic place for open world builds. Now, I'd recommend Metabattle for open world builds because there are a ton of other websites out there for the other game modes that do a fantastic job just as well. Now, of course, jumping into Metabattle, you can see here we go to professions and we can pick game modes depending on what you want. So, of course, we can click on open world and we can wait for it to load. Then you'll see a whole bunch of builds per class. Now, no class is left out with Metabattle, so you can definitely see there's a class for everyone. Now, what I like to do on Metabattle is actually look for open world solo builds, so I just find a build, check the tags, and if the tag's not there, then I move on to the other builds. So when you get into the build page, you'll see a whole bunch of tags that you can see that the build is designed for. In this case, we're looking at the Soul Beast Power Soul Beast build, and you can see that it's open world roaming, open world Zergs, open world recommended, and open world general. So if we keep scrolling down, you'll see obviously what skills you need, what weapons you want to take, what specs you want, and of course variations. Then of course your standard equipment, different weapons. You can hover over these. They show the ascended variants, but you can hover over them and obviously see the stats to figure out which one it is. In this case here, it's your general berserkers build. You can see your sigils and runes that you're going to need. And again, it tells you here again variants for gear, runes, sigils, so on. It even gives you consumables for open world builds and of course longbow usage as well. So they give you some form of a rotation to learn as well, just for the open world, just to get you used to actually using rotations. Now the great thing about Metabattle is if you scroll down to the bottom, you'll find build ratings, which are actually ratings given to each build from community members that actually have an account on Metabattle. As you can see, not a lot of people actually rate the builds on Metabattle, so I would kind of stay away from just thinking, oh, that's 5 stars, that must be the best build in the game. Because it doesn't work like that when only one person actually gives it a rating. Now, the best place to actually look about how good a build is to come down to the comment section below that, where you'll see a ton of people asking questions. And a lot of the time, it seems like the mods actually respond to the questions that the community has per build. So you'll definitely find the answers you're looking for there. If not, just type a comment in and I'm sure the mods will get to you eventually. Now, moving on to Fractals, we have a website called discretize.eu. When you first load up the website, you'll see this lovely page. Just click menu at the top and click on guides. And as you can see, we have a whole bunch of guides for the meta. What should you play? Different guides on CCing, crits, damage mitigation, all that type of good stuff. Then, of course, the meat that you actually want is the build page. If you jump over to the build page, you'll see that we have power meta builds, Condi meta builds, and good builds for a lot of different classes. Now, if you don't want to scroll through all these pictures, you can, of course, go straight to the list on the left-hand side, where it will show you a compacted list of all of this. So let's say you've finally chosen a build, and let's say here we're using Power Soul Beast again. We just click on that. You'll see a template code, your key skills, ratings, group layouts if you want to follow meta groups. Obviously, you don't have to because pug groups are very easy to run with in Fractals. They're not that difficult, guys, honestly. Then you'll find which equipment you want. If you want to go for a certain agony resistance level, you'll see your gear that you want to take, and you can see what runes and stats you want. Then you've got your weapons again with sigils and stats you want. And, of course, backpack and trinkets as usual. Then you can see here consumables and of course weapon variations that you may want to follow. Then scrolling down even more, you have your trait, you've got your skills, your pet, and obviously further information where it says situational trait, situational skills, skirmishing and fractals, so it gives you a little bit of different variants. Then you have your defiance bar and more details as you scroll down. I'd definitely take your time to read through this just to give you guys a bit more information on the builds you're using. And of course right below that we have the rotation / skill usage. Now this is great because this again gives you a rotation for you guys to practice so you guys can keep up to date. Now again, rotations are great because it actually helps you mean you're doing your role correctly and you don't want to be sat there with 0 DPS while in a fractal, especially if you're getting into those higher tier ones like tier 3 or tier 4. Now keep looking on the left of the website here, we also have a tab called Fractals. Now this shows you fractal guides on challenge modes and tier 4 fractals. It's a fantastic tool to use if you need a reminder of what to do for each fractal, and overall, just a fantastic tool for the community in general for Fractals. Now we're going to talk about one of my favorite game modes, which is actually World versus World. Now the community has a fantastic tool called gw2mists.com, and there are a lot of great things here. You can see a whole bunch of news and guides on World versus World, and of course their own little giveaways, etc. Then you can see the matches in EU and NA, and of course leaderboards and builds. Now where you want to go is actually the builds tab, so you just click on overview, and the first thing you should notice is this big scale builds page. Now of course you've got builds for big scale in meta, you've got good builds and niche builds, and then there's one that they're testing below there, so you can kind of ignore that. But either way, they have builds for each class, depending on what you want to do. Now, if Zergs aren't your thing in World versus World, then obviously you don't want big scale builds. You'll be looking at the smaller scale and roaming builds. So for example, we can click on roaming. As you can also see, there's a tab here saying the area is currently under construction. The builds may be incomplete. Now, I believe they have just started putting the feature in for small scale and roaming, but obviously in a week or two, this will probably be completed. So fingers crossed for that. But it's a fantastic website and I love it. For example, let's go to big scale. We'll click on power surge and you can see that there's builds, guides, videos, and comment section. Now, of course, scrolling down, it shows you what armor you want. So what stats? In this case, we want Marauder's armor with superior runes of the scholar. And of course, your weapons and trinkets and backpack, consumables, traits, skills, all the good stuff you need is right here. Now, another great tool for the community is a website that's just popped up. We used to have a website called Gods of PvP that was a great place for PvP builds in the community. Sadly, that's no longer being updated, but conveniently, the people who worked on that have now moved over to hardstock.gg. So when you first arrive at the website, what you want to do is hover over the Guild Wars 2 tab, then head over to builds. For this example, let's use Necromancer. You can see a ton of builds for raids, fractals, player versus player, world versus world, and open world builds. Now, I've already recommended websites for all the other type of game modes. I would still use those websites over Hardstock. Hardstock mainly for me is a PvP builds website where I love to check out the PvP builds because they do a lot of tournaments and they follow a lot of the monthly tournaments as well. So they definitely know what's going on with PvP builds. So of course we can just jump into one. Let's say here we're going to use Power Reaper. You can see the traits you want to use, the difficulty level, and of course your PvP amulets and runes, weapons, and skills that you may want to use. They've also got a little bit of a guide on skill usage when you're in PvP. And it's a great, simple tool just for finding those PvP builds that you want. Saving the big one for last, we have Snowcrows. Snowcrows is a website dedicated to raid builds. I absolutely love this website, and a lot of the Guild Wars 2 community do as well. Now, one thing you'll notice when you actually get onto Snowcrows is that tabs at the top here. You'll have benchmarks, builds, and community. If you click on benchmarks, you'll see a bunch of benchmarks for large hitboxes, small hitboxes. Obviously, guys, take the DPS numbers on these benchmarks with a pinch of salt. It doesn't mean the one at the top is the best class. Things don't work like that, okay? There are classes that do a lot of things better than other classes, but might not have those DPS numbers on the benchmarks. You got to remember, this is just against a golem that stands still, okay? Now, again, straight after benchmarks, you can go over to the builds tab. Here, we're going to click all, and of course, we can see every build for all the classes. In this case, we're going to head over to Power Soulbeast because that's what I play in raids. And you can see a nice little overview at the top here. Scroll down, you've got your variants, greatsword, and longbow. I'm going to click longbow because that's what I like to use. Then, of course, you see your armor, what sigils, what stats you want to use. Again, with a backpack and trinkets. And, of course, your primary weapon set and your secondary weapon set, food, utility, and infusions. All that good stuff that's basic for a build. Then, of course, you've got your skills and your traits. And you've got a whole bunch of details. And at the bottom here, you even have the rotations for you guys to learn with a video helping you see what you actually have to hit. Now, once you've actually seen all the different builds that you can use, on the side here as well, you have build, utility skills, trades, and gear variations. Now, this shows you what skills you want to use, what skill variations, what traits you want to use, etc. All the good stuff that you can actually change out depending on the encounters you're at. Then, of course, you have encounter guides. This is probably one of my favorite parts of the website in total, because a lot of different encounters require different needs. So, for example, if you're playing DPS, essentially you should have a power build and a condition build before jumping into raids. A good example of this is Wing 1 here, where we see Veiled Guardian. That's the very first encounter you'll do there. So you can use a Power Soul Beast build there. Then you scroll down and you'll see Gorseville. That's the second boss. Again, we can use Power Soul Beast there. But then we get down to Sabatha the Saboteur, which is the third and last boss of the actual raid wing. And it says not viable. We recommend playing Condition Soul Beast or Hybrid Soul Beast at this encounter. Now, a lot of groups out there would recommend that you have the condition build to actually deal with this boss in a better manner. I've actually tried using power on this boss, and it is a bit of a struggle. Using condition was just a lot better for me personally, DPS-wise, and obviously a lot better for the group because you're bringing in that damage consistently against these type of bosses. So definitely, guys, check out the builds, and make sure you guys click on encounter guides for which raid you're actually wanting to run. Then, of course, you have your introduction, which just gives you another general overlook of what the build does and what you do. It's just a nice little tool. If you guys actually want to get into raiding, Then, of course, we have the community tab here where you can click on raid training and it'll take you to this tab. So, of course, we have the raid training section here. We have a whole bunch of discords and communities out there that are willing to train new players into raiding. Honestly, guys, it's not so scary. Just do it. You guys are going to love it. I find it super fun and it's a great time. So for NA players out there, we have the Raid Academy. This is another community that trains players to actually get into raids. Again, you can find them on this website here. And then we have the Raid Training Initiative, which is for EU players. I've actually joined that Discord channel, and I've also signed up for a raid, which I'll be doing later this week. I'm very excited. Then, of course, for more EU communities, we have the Crossroads Inns and Raid Learn Glide. But essentially, that's it, guys. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and thank you all for joining me on the very first Fantastic Builds video. It's been a blast to make this video, even though I had a few recording issues the first time I tried to do this. Trust me, it was very painful realizing that I stuffed up. But don't worry, it's okay. We got the video at the end now, finally. And I cannot wait to see you guys in these game modes with some of these awesome builds. I'm actually planning on making videos on each individual build, but it's up to you guys now to tell me which ones you actually want to start with. We can either start with Open World, Fractals, Raids, PvP, or even World versus World. It's up to you guys. I'm looking forward to doing these videos, guys. This series is going to be fantastic. If you didn't hear the part at the start of the video, the actual series is going to be called Fantastic Builds. So there we go. Keep an eye out for my next video, guys, and I'll see you again in the future. Peace.